Alright fellas, what's going on? Denonu here, the man with the biggest and the most blackest privilege on YouTube. And in this video here, we're going to be talking about Luke Cage. Marvel's new entry into the Netflix series that they've been doing so far. And this started out being something completely different. I've been waiting for Luke Cage to come out for a really long time. And Friday came and went, and I was like, you know what, let me get off work, let me binge watch Luke Cage real quick, order some pizza, you know, and just chill out. And I watched the whole entire thing over the weekend, probably twice so far. And I knew I was going to do something on it video wise, so I figured, I was like, well, let me do like an episode review kind of sort of thing. So after every episode, I recorded myself, and I got like halfway into doing that, and I was like, you know what, let me not do that. So I changed things up. So this is going to be probably a series of videos where I talk about certain things in Luke Cage, and it's probably going to be maybe 3, maybe 4 videos long. I knew I was going to do like a long-winded commentary on this, so I figured I'd break it up into parts this time. And I got like a little outline of what I'm going to do. So first things first, Luke Cage is a really popular character recently in Marvel comic books, but probably more so towards I would say black people. He's been a hugely popular character since, I want to say, like the 80s and 90s, but Marvel really hasn't started pushing him until like the thousands, when he joined up with the Avengers and things like that. And as a character, he was always my favorite black character that Marvel has. Marvel has a few of them, but as far as being like a black superhero, you know, DC doesn't really have one like that. You have Mr. Terrific, Steel, but they are like knockoffs, or at least Steel is. He came about in a story revolving Superman, and you know, they just didn't have great stories like you want, like let's say like Spider-Man, Batman, the X-Men, things like that. So the only closest characters that, let's say, black people could relate to was X-Men, with them dealing with racism and all of that, because of the whole segregation and what black people went through back in the day. And X-Men was the character that everybody, you know, relates to. Like, I'm a huge fan of Magneto, because I'm a huge fan of Malcolm X in real life. And they pretty much got the same thing going on. But Luke Cage has always been like that stand-up character, you know, that at least I can relate to. At least me and my brother did. He's actually my brother's favorite superhero. And as a character, it's like, by him always staying street level, it kind of sort of reminds you of where you come from, so to speak. And when I heard that they first casted what's his name, Mike Colter, I think, I didn't really see him in a whole lot. From what I understand, he's been on TV a few times. I remember first seeing him when they casted him for Locke in Halo, and then they came out with the Halo what's it called, the mini movie thing that they came out explaining Locke's character, like how, like before he joined up with Oni, they had a thing where he went to an asteroid with a bunch of people and got trapped there, and whatever this alien life form on the asteroid was killing him. I first seen him in that, and I was like, okay, he seems pretty good, you know. He's tall, he's built, he's not overly muscular like I would have wanted, but I mean, after I seen him in Jessica Jones, I was like, okay, this is doable. Most of all, Marvel, you know, when they cast these people and these characters, Netflix and in the cinematic universe, they dumb down the power set of the heroes. I don't know why that is. Maybe it makes it easier on CG and all that stuff. They don't have to show them they don't have to show Luke Cage holding up like a building from falling, or doing the most grandiose things that you see in the comic books. So they kind of play him down a little bit. For instance, Thor in the Marvel movies should be a powerhouse. There is nothing that they've had in the movies so far that should have even hurt him, period. You know, comparing him to his comic book counterpart. But, you know, in order to make the movies look good, I understand why they kind of dumb him down and everything. But when I first seen Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, I wasn't overly blown away, but I was like, you know what, I can get down with this. The fact that they made him a little bit smaller and dumbed down his power set, they didn't make him as strong. You know, I was like, okay, you know, that got me interested in his series when it came out, and I've been looking forward ever since. Because Marvel has been knocking it out, you know, out of the park, movie-wise and on Netflix. They've been killing it. And I was kind of expecting Luke Cage to do the same thing. I was kind of worried before it was coming out. I was like, since Marvel's had a really good track record with Daredevil, Jessica Jones, and then Daredevil season 2, I was like, they're gonna have to hit a slump somewhere. You know, one of the future ones aren't gonna be as good as the ones that came before. It has to go down eventually. And I didn't want it to happen with Luke Cage. And so far, you know, after watching it, I can honestly say, at least to me, and I'll get into more reasons why later, because I feel it resonates more so with black people and a certain type of black person, rather, than, let's say, the other heroes do. So, with me personally, by me being black and being grown up with that same mindset, it resonates with me a whole lot more. So I can hold it up there with, like, Daredevil season 1. That's, you know, it's like almost tied for what they try to do with the character and everything like that. And I hold it up in the same, you know, pristine, because I love Daredevil season 1. Daredevil season 2 for me kind of fell off with the whole Elektra stuff, but that and the Punisher stuff, that was on point. That you know, that was on par. But Luke Cage, you have a lot of stuff that played into it. I'm glad that whoever was doing it, or Marvel, I don't know if it's Kevin Feige, I know he does the movie stuff, but I'm glad whoever at Marvel is doing it decided to make Luke Cage like, we're gonna do everything black oriented and black centric, given the character, given the locations and everything like that, and that plays a part throughout its entirety. Like, I would say Luke Cage in general, besides it being, oh, this is a superhero thing about Luke Cage, there's musical elements in it that, and like I said, maybe I'm biased because I grew up, my childhood was listening to most of the music that they played in Luke Cage. You know, I grew up in the 90s and the late 80s. So it resonates, you know, like that's what I said. The kids who grow up now may not feel the same way because they're outside of the time period for when all of this stuff kind of, I'm not gonna say when it takes place, but there's a lot of history that goes on with a lot of things that they have in this, that if you are, let's say, an 80s or a 90s kid, you'll understand and you'll love it for it. Like the musical stuff, the fact that every episode has like an ingrained song or theme to it. You even had Method Man in an episode. That was pretty cool. You had a lot of black themes in there, or let's say social commentary type thoughts and things that they try to get over to you in there. Like you had about growing up in the inner city, gangster life and running the streets and all that. You have old people trying to teach young people not to do that. You have police brutality is also in an episode. They talk about that. The whole every black man in a hoodie isn't a threat. They have a whole commentary talking about that. So it's like you have tons of other things that, let's say, black people relate to in real life that have been translated in this little Netflix show. And it's only 13 episodes, but it doesn't feel like it. Feels like it's like 15 or like 25 episodes, given the amount of stuff that they throw at you. There's a whole lot of stuff with, you know, themes and suggestive little hints that they drop that black people experience throughout life in this. Like even young people resorting to just picking up a gun and shooting somebody. You know, and you know, they see it as a quick way out and they see it and they glorify it. They even jump into like I said, it's a whole lot of things. And those things you may not recognize, and I'm not saying that I'm not knocking people who may not be black, but I'm just saying that black people, it resonates with black people a whole lot more because we understand it, because we live it, so to speak. And I would say not necessarily black people, but let's say urban culture in general, because I can spin that to Hispanics and anybody growing up in the ghetto inner city environment. So it's more relatable to culture-wise, black people, Hispanics, ghetto people, poor people, that kind of sort of thing, than let's say it would be to a white suburb kid who's just watching Luke Cage because it's the new thing. They may not feel the same way when they watch it that, let's say, other people would. That's what I'm trying to get across. But so far, Luke Cage is it's high up on the bar with me. I think right after I seen it, I showed it to my dad, and as I was watching it, for the first time myself, I watched it by myself. I was sitting there watching it, and I was like, you know what? At least 10 to 15 moments in it reminded me of just my dad in particular, and growing up with him. And I'll get into more of that later when I, do the next video when I talk about characters. But it relates to younger black guys and older black men. And you can spin it towards Hispanics and everything too, like I said before. But culture-wise, you have it's more black culture than, let's say, Hispanic culture. But if you're, like I said, an urban or inner city youth, you can spin it towards any race of that. But it was done extremely well, YouTube, extremely well. And I mean, I don't know if they're gonna do a season 2, but I really do want them to do a season 2. I really do. And that's the thing, is by season 1 being so good, I just don't see how they would top it. The only thing, if I had to pick something, I'm not gonna say Luke Cage is all perfect. It's not the greatest thing since sliced bread and toilet paper. But the only, if I had to put a con in there, the only thing that I could throw in there where I could be like, this wasn't as good, was probably I'm gonna say story. And it has a story, but I feel the story could have been better. I don't know why they made certain changes. I'll get into that in the next video because I'm going to talk about the story in depthly. But the story, for the most part, just like the other Netflix shows, excuse me, you have it's like the first 6 to 7 episodes is about one thing, and then the latter half of the series is about something else. I've noticed that with Jessica Jones. I've noticed that with Daredevil, and it's the same thing with Luke Cage. In Daredevil, take Daredevil season 2 for example. It starts off about Daredevil and the Punisher, and then it kind of dives into, oh look, here's the stuff with Elektra and the Hand, and then it spatters and and then that takes over the rest of the series with Punisher stuff dropping here and there. Jessica Jones, same thing. The whole thing was about the Purple Man, right? But you have Jessica Jones dealing with her baggage in the beginning, then insert Luke Cage here and there, and then you deal with let's say how to stop the Purple Man, which is when, like a prime example, earlier in the series they were running around trying to catch the Purple Man, and then about halfway in they caught him, and then they had him trapped up in that little room or cage. And then it was like, okay, how do we deal with him? And then that spanned a few episodes. So it's like you have 2 points to the story that they're trying to tell. And Luke Cage is the same way. If you've seen the trailers for it, you know that he goes against this guy called Cottonmouth. That's the one guy you see with the Biggie poster behind him and everything. He's like the first 8 episodes, 7, 8 episodes. And then it shifts to another plot point after that. And then that follows up with what happened before. So that's why I said it's like a 2-part story. And if I had to compare it to, let's say, Daredevil was a bit more well done because it kind of escalated. Whereas Luke Cage, and this is why I have to consider the con towards Luke Cage, is that the story is there, but the problem of it is, in Luke Cage, it is such a distinctive split between Cottonmouth stuff and then the follow-up part, and it almost feels like it's 2 separate stories. That's how different it is. Like, I'll get into it when I talk about it in the next video, so you guys can, I'm gonna fully explain that. But it feels like you're watching 2 separate shows. Like, that's the gist of what I'm trying to say. It feels like you're watching 2 separate storylines mashed together as the same season. And I think they could have did that better. They could have wrapped that up and made that season 1. And I'll get into them, you know, my thoughts in the next video and everything. But they could have did that better. So that's why I had to consider storyline as a fault. I'm not saying that the storyline is bad by any means, but it's just they couldn't, or I don't know if they couldn't, but I could think of a few ways to make that better. If they'd have made it all one thing, then it would have been great. It would have been damn near perfect in my eyes. But they didn't. But anyways, fellas, sorry for ranting on about 15 minutes. Trying to cut things short. But be on the lookout for the next video. I'm going to explain story. I'm going to explain the main characters and some other things as far as how, you know, I'm going to basically go in depth of what I was just talking about and give my thoughts on how I think that they can make this story better. So if you guys want to see that, check out the next video. My name has been Denonu, the man with the biggest and the most blackest privilege on YouTube. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out.